This is Swarfcast. I'm Noah Graff. I am very honored to be with Matthew Rassi, Principal Manufacturing Expert for 20 Helping Hands in Chicago, Illinois. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
Hey, Noah, I'm excited to be here with you and looking forward to sharing a little bit about lean manufacturing.
Awesome. We have touched on lean manufacturing in our 5-6 years of existence, but not enough. And I think this is going to be really good education for our people. Just to start, I want to know a quick summary of 20 Helping Hands, and then we'll just to get some context, and then we'll get a little deeper.
Absolutely. So 20 Helping Hands was started in 2014, so about 10 years ago. My wife and I had 8 children at the time. So that's how we got to the 20. But I now have 11 children. So the numbers don't necessarily work out exactly, but 20 Helping Hands came from my wife and I and our number of children and a number of different businesses that we've had along the way, including cleaning. During COVID, we did junk removal, and then I've rolled that into my consulting as well. And I try to utilize my children to assist me wherever possible in consulting.
You have to, because how do you have any time with 11 kids? I just had a 2-year-old. I have a 2-year-old, and I'm just like, I mean, how do you afford more than one in the first place? God, that could be a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, and I've been able to structure them with this consulting to be able to be home almost every night. So in the last 6 months, from July through December, I was only gone 2 nights with my consulting. So I was very excited to be able to be doing things locally and working with organizations and businesses that respect and understand I need to be home for my family, and yet I can still find ways to add value to organizations.
So you do most of your work remotely. How often do you go into factories?
So it depends on the pace of change that they're willing to handle, but typically every other week I go and spend a day with a client. So I have 4 clients, and so that's 2 days a week that I'm with clients and 3 days a week that I am home preparing or working on other types of things for the business. Awesome. That's my typical schedule.
All right. Very interesting. So how did you get here? I know you have a background in manufacturing, and as somebody who consults people about their businesses, it seems like it's, makes sense. So, give me the 5-6 minute life story.
Absolutely. So I went to school for mechanical engineering, but as a junior, my last internship was in design, and I hated it. And I went to my counselor and said, I don't know why I'm in mechanical engineering. I hate sitting at a desk. He said, why don't you take a look at manufacturing? Because that's the other half of mechanical engineering. And so I did. And I got a job with a manufacturing company, Cooper Industries, out of college, and spent 2 years on their corporate team.
What kind of thing did they make? What do they manufacture?
Cooper made all kinds of things. So there's Cooper Tools, Cooper Automotive, which was also Moog. So like Lufkin tape measures is probably the most well-known of their tools. I was at a chain plant making Campbell chain. So a variety of tools, heavy manufacturing. And I was with them for about 2 years and focused on their corporate team. So we did Kaizen events, and I would fly to a different plant every other week and do a Kaizen event. And so I learned this lean thing.
What is Kaizen?
Excellent. Kaizen is change for the better, making improvements. And sometimes it's as an event, and sometimes it's just change. But a typical Kaizen event would be pulling together individuals from different areas, and maybe it's 8 to 10 folks focusing on an area and physically moving things around and making the change instead of having this big plan. Just come in, pick people's brains, what could be better about the process, and 3 days later, we're done. There's a task list of a few things that need followed up, and here's the improvements that we've been able to make. So picking problem areas and challenges within organizations and just tackling them as a team, hands-on, seeing the change, very effective in employee engagement and in getting things done.
So it's a mastermind group, sort of?
In some respects, although it's more based on the team, the those that are actually doing the work. So we've got the operators, we've got maintenance from the area, we've got their customers within the plant, and then there's engineers and lean experts that are helping as well.
And they all meet,
They all
several
come together,
companies.
have about a 3 hour training to explain what we're going to be doing, the area we're going to focus on. Maybe someone's already done a value stream map of that, of here's what they actually do and how long it takes to do everything. And this is why we're focused on this area. Safety concerns, throughput concerns, floor space concerns, quality concerns, whatever it is that we're going to focus on. And here's our goal. We want to reach this by the end of the 3 days. And then we go out and we start making changes and trialing different things to see what we can do to make the improvements and test it out over the next few days. Plan, do, check, and act multiple times in iterations.
Can you tell me about a specific one that really struck you, something out of all your years?
I would say the best example that we had was in the chain plant. So chain is a perfect example. If you push chain, you end up with a pile of chain. But if you pull chain, that's how it's meant to be done. And so in many organizations, they are pushing product and hoping customers will buy it. And if you can get that flipped around so that the customer, when they order it, you're able to pull that through the facility and pull that product through. And so in the chain plant, they had forming machines, and then they had a welding department, and then they had a testing department, and then they had a plating department. They were all separate, and they would all just make it and put it in tubs, and it was just tubs and tubs and tubs, just inventory everywhere. And so the first Kaizen event that we did there was focused on putting a forming machine next to another forming, because chains are formed once 180 degrees from the other, or 90 degrees from the other. So we had to have 2 forming machines, 2 welding machines side by side, and a testing machine. And so we would form it, weld it, test it, and now we have the completed chain. And the advantage of that is that I don't have tubs and tubs and tubs of scrap, which is what often happens when you do things in batch, is you make it all and you don't know if it's bad until it gets to the next process or several processes down. If you can link those processes together, your quality goes up, your productivity goes up, your waste goes way down. That's what you're looking for. So that was the most profound, I would say, example of a Kaizen event that could make a difference. And so they had 60 or 70 forming machines and 60 or 70 welders. Within that first year, we had 6 of these sets made. And those were almost outproducing the whole rest of the plant. So it can really have a profound impact on the amount of production that can be done. And did it take changes and mental changes for the operators? It certainly did. Somebody that used to just run formers now had to run forming and welding and testing. But now they owned it all and could make it work.
Interesting. Okay, so you started out as an engineer, but you pretty much went into the management and theory of managing a shop pretty quickly. Is that pretty typical?
It was a training program that I was in. So their goal was to get you to be a plant manager. So it was a manufacturing training program. And so I was in a number of different roles. I did the corporate Kaizen part, but then I also was in quality for 6 months and a manufacturing supervisor for 6 months, and a number of different roles within manufacturing organizations so that I could see how the different parts work together. And then through the years there, by the time I was 35, my goal was to be a plant manager, which I achieved when I was 34, and I was running a 300-person plant across multiple shifts, multiple buildings ended up running. At the time, I had 7 children. And I quickly learned that it was too much. It was too much to be able to offer. Now, I loved it personally. I was just loving my time at work and the improvements and the projects that we were doing. But for my family's sake, I needed to step back. So a few years later, I ended up stepping back to a much smaller organization. So my first 15 years were in lighting, lots of people, very high production, moved to a very small organization, just 15 folks making laparoscopic instruments. So instead of cutting you open for surgery, they just make these little holes and they come in and do the surgery. Those instruments are what we were making.
You were using Swiss machines for that?
We had Swiss machines, CNC machines, wire EDMs, lasers, the whole works. Very vertically integrated. We were making almost all of the parts ourselves except some of the moldings. And we were making laparoscopic instruments I came in, their lead times were 8 to 10 weeks, very typical for most manufacturing organizations. And we were able to get that all the way down to 1 week lead time for the product. And so as you reduce the lead time, you reduce the cost and you can service your customers much quicker.
Interesting. And so what's your opinion of something that's vertically integrated? Is that, does that lend itself to being quote unquote lean?
Absolutely. If you have good management and good manufacturing practices, you want to be vertically integrated. If you have poor manufacturing practices and poor leadership, then being vertically integrated only compounds your problems. So if and as you go along this lean journey, you will recognize that different suppliers are not able to keep up or do not follow this practice. They want to do it all in batch. And therefore, I need to bring more operations in so I can do this vertically integrated if I can use the capacity that I'm going to gain from bringing those machines in.
Okay.
So I was with the medical company for 7 years. And the last 5 of those years, I was only working 4 days a week at the medical company. And then 1 day a week, I was doing consulting. And I had about 5 years to practice and see how can I help organizations with improvements. And the owner was totally fine with that. As long as I kept his operation running well, I could do what I wanted on the side. And each time, instead of asking for an increase at the end of the year, I would ask for more time off so that I could do more consulting. So by the end, I was about 3.5 days working there and a day and a half in consulting. And then for the last 2 years now, I've been full-time consulting. And I got myself up to the 4 clients. It's a good, steady pace. And typically with the client for about 4 to 6 months. And then it'll move on to more of a retainer or special projects, but that 4 to 6 month intense teaching lean, getting your team so that they can problem solve themselves, doing 5S events, Kaizen events, understanding continuous improvement and the mindset of that.
Wow. Okay. So now, yeah, I want a overall definition of lean. I know it's used a lot. You know, you hear about black belts and Kaizen and we did a preparation for this and talked about a bunch of things, and it wasn't exactly what I was expecting to focus on. So yeah, give me the, a summary of lean. And I know there's, it's got several layers. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people who hear the word and don't really know what it means.
Absolutely. So at the heart of it, it is the Kaizen process for continuous improvement. So looking for opportunity for continuous improvement, but it's really a framework and a structure that helps you find the waste and remove it. So in that sense, the concept of lean and thin, that's where the concept and the phrasing of lean manufacturing came from, was reducing the waste. So in a typical organization, if you were to take a pie chart and look at the different wastes that go around in the value add is only a very small sliver. For example, 8% is typically the number that I find. And so if somebody is making a product for somebody, it will have a 6-week lead time, but it's only in the machines about 4 or 6 hours total. So why does it take 6 weeks to be able to make this product? The value add portion is so small. And so in many cases, I'll say, I'm not going to come in and tune up your machine so that you can make it in 5 hours, because as far as the customer is concerned, it still takes you 5 weeks and 4.5 days, right? We're going to find ways to reduce that waste and take it out. But what's really challenging with waste is if I would say, motion is a waste. Walking from place to place or moving something from place to place with transportation is a waste. It is a waste, but how do you get rid of it? Like, I have to go from here to there. Rework is a waste, but I'm not going to send bad product. So it's hard conceptually to say, how do I get rid of waste? And therefore, lean, I like to use the house of lean, which is a number of tools that can be utilized. And you start at the foundation. And the first part is a mindset change. So it's very much an employee engagement. And as employees engage and share ideas, sharing is a big part of lean as well. I'll get into that in a little bit. But the basic tools of lean lead to continuous improvement. If we're a little bit better tomorrow than we are today, then we are succeeding. So continue that
Yeah.
growth and that those gains, and over time you find that you've come a long ways as you implement these tools and efforts. But it's not just tools, and it's not just a framework, but it's also the mindset, the way that we think about things. The concepts such as running towards problems instead of hiding them or hoping nobody finds it, but actually
Yeah.
admitting to each other, the other day I was doing this and I made a mistake. I want you all to know about it so you don't make the same mistake. That is a very tough culture to change.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I think humans are pretty much naturally inclined to do the opposite. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just our society has learned that behavior. What do you think? Are humans naturally inclined to just try to avoid problems rather than to solve them proactively?
I would agree with that. We don't like pain. And so
Yeah.
we're very proud individuals. And so we want to keep our pride as well. And it takes a humility. It takes a recognition that there's something that's bigger than me here. And I want to be able to share
Mm,
that with others. And as you step into that role, it's very freeing. No longer are do you have to be perfect? Like as an expert or something, you come in and everyone would think, oh, he knows all the answers, but I don't know all the answers. And I'm willing to admit that. And it actually makes me more of an expert because I'm willing to say that than if somebody thinks and acts like they know it all when it's very obvious to everybody you don't. It's not possible to know it all.
very interesting. So, okay, the what you try to do or what you do is you come into a shop. Um, what first? What type of shop would you come in to consult, and what's generally going on that makes them bring you in?
Most of my clients have come through LinkedIn as I share stories and examples of improvements that we've been able to do at other places. They say, I want that for my shop. So I am
Okay.
typically working with small manufacturers from 15 to 50 million and in revenue that are manufacturing a product. Typically, the owner is much more interested in new product development or in sales than in manufacturing. And yet their manufacturing is faltering. They're really struggling. They have very long lead times. Their cost is going up. They're fearful that they're going to continue losing people. They cannot get enough people. And my moniker is accelerating your output without hiring more people, without buying new machines. And that acceleration can be both in increased output or it can be in reduced lead time. And both of those can lead to increased sales. And so those are the types of companies that I have been working with and finding great success. And I was expecting when I did consulting that I would be taking somebody that's on the lean scale somewhere in the middle and taking them to the elite. That was my training. That's where I've been at. But what I found is many of them are at the very beginning and they've hardly heard of lean or have only heard horror stories of lean not working, or I don't even know, we're just going to lose our jobs, right? And so I've got to work on the communication portion and get them to a certain level that they can start to function on their own. My goal is not to come in and do the work for them. My goal is to train them so that they can be doing these process improvements over time and then get to those elite levels as time goes on.
Do you think that perhaps, obviously, the processes have to be changed and the culture has to be changed, but do you think that perhaps if these owners put in place um, a manager or a CEO and they delegated that to people, that might be something that would make things easier because, maybe you have an owner who likes sales and they're good at it. So maybe instead of them focusing on sales because they didn't like the other part, maybe they hired somebody else. And then, of course, they brought you in. Just giving somebody else your problems. Um, is that a solution you often see?
What I've typically found is that they've tried to hire operations managers and they've typically been command and control type people, or they've tried to promote from within, but they haven't given their teams leadership
Uh,
training. And therefore, individuals end up, because they were really good with their hands or really good with the machine, they end up managing people. And I'm not opposed to internal hiring and doing those types of things, but you've got to equip them with the tools because it's a different skill set that is needed to manage than it is to just make product. And so in most of these
Right.
organizations, very loyal people, they've been working their way up, but they don't know how to lead, or they've been in the command style. And that doesn't work, especially as the generations are switching in manufacturing. Those that are working there, and they're, these new folks coming in, they're not willing to work tons of overtime whenever they're asked to do it. They're not willing to, and they don't want to just be told what to do. They want to be given a challenge and rise to meet it. And so it takes a different approach to management and thinking, and just hiring another manager has typically not worked for them in the past. And so what is it that we can do to equip their teams? But they are often running around like a chicken with their head cut off. They do not have enough time, right? I just don't have enough time. I'm asked for everything. And there are tools to help with that. I love to teach them this phrase: either an owner, a manager, or a supervisor. When people come to you with their problem, I want you to ask this question: what do you think we should do? And then if it's not going to burn the place down, equip them to go do it. And say next time, hey, if you can handle it, just handle it. There's sometimes
All right,
people
right.
really
So this is where I'm going here. Okay. So this is like the fundamental thing that you start with. You come into a place, you've got an owner who they distract themselves from managing with what they enjoy, or what's the least resistant thing. Or maybe they are trying to manage and focusing on it, but they just really don't know what they're doing. So you come in. What inspires people, first of all, to call you? Are sales are suffering or whatever? I mean, they have to sort of have a realization that they need help, right? To contact you in the first place.
Absolutely. What resonates is they see the same problem that they have being talked about and being resolved. So whether it is they just don't have enough time in the day, to somebody it's like, hey, I was able to take a vacation last week and my business didn't fall apart and I didn't feel overwhelmed. Absolutely, that is possible, right? And they're like, no, I've been doing this for 20 years. It's not possible. It is possible. And I've been able to help other managers do that, right? Or our lead times were at 6 weeks and now we're down to a week. Wait, how can you just take out 5 weeks of lead time on there? Well, it's a different way of looking at things and approaching the supply chain and those things.
Right.
So I will
So you have to
typically,
have an owner that's going, all right, we need change here. And so at least they're admitting that. And then you come in, and what is the first thing you do?
so what I like to do is come in and do a discovery visit. So I need to spend about 3 to 4 hours with the owner and with those on the floor, walking through their process to understand what they are doing. And this is one of my kind of superpowers, is being able to walk through a plant and know where the problems are and the best things that we can do. And what I tell them is, I'll do a discovery visit for free, no cost. I'm just going to come in. I just need your time. Give me a couple hours and I will tell you the top 3 things you can do to immediately improve your productivity. And I'll share them with you. And if you guys can do it, you take it and you run with it. My goal is to help manufacturing improve in the United States. That's what I'm looking to do. If you can do it, go. If you would like some advice and want to follow a process to be able to get those gains, I have a process and I can help you do that. And so that
So
is
there's
what I
three
do.
things. Are these three things the same for everybody?
No, they're not
Oh,
always the same, but I'll tell you that they usually fall into the same buckets. And so I've created a free resource online of starting lean. How do you start lean? And it's typically, right, employee engagement. You've got to be sure that your employees are engaged and offering ideas. You've got to be sure you have visual systems. The number of places that I walk into and ask, hey, how's it going today? How's production? Oh, it's going great. Oh, how much are you supposed to get today? I don't know. How much have you done so far? I don't know. How do you know you're doing great? I guess I don't know. Well, the machine's running, right? No, if we don't know
yeah.
and we don't measure it, then how do we know where we're at and what's going on? So just make it visual. If you find, and everyone's like, oh, we're a job shop. That's only for high product. That's not true. Every shop that I'm in is a job shop. I'm at a place now that's making washers, right? It's a circle with a hole in the middle. They're like, it's custom. We custom it forever. They're exactly the same. ID changes, OD changes, material changes, thickness changes, but it's a washer. And so focusing on those types of things are the foundational parts of lean.
Okay. Okay. So then the next step is to usually to get the owner to go and ask the employees, what do you think I should do?
No, that's not typically the first step. So we'll
Okay.
designate and look at areas that we think are going to need improvement. And what we want to do is start getting engagement from employees. So how do you do that? How do you communicate with employees? Well, are you having a huddle? Are you meeting with your team and sharing information? So I like to say the 5 shares. You need to share information. The more information you share with your team, the better decisions they're going to make. So share where you're at. Hey, our revenues are about right here. Our profit level's about right here. We've been continually declining, or we're growing. Our lead time is too long, or not long enough, or whatever the situation is. They need to know where you're at in the market. Here's our biggest customers. Here's our 3 biggest quality issues. If you haven't shared with your team what are your 3 biggest quality issues, you're missing your chance to reduce them. As long as everyone's aware of those top 3, your quality issues will drop by 80%. It's the 80-20 rule. So we want to start sharing information, sharing opportunities, sharing responsibilities, sharing ideas. So ideas is a big one. You need an influx of ideas, and not every idea is a great idea, but every idea is good and should be recorded. So record
Okay.
your folks' ideas, but don't go off and run and do them. This is why so many operations are struggling, because every idea that comes up, somebody tries to take it and do it, and nothing gets done. Too many things at the top of the funnel. Just record them for a month. Now we've got 30 ideas that came in over the last month. Now let's sit down together as a group and say, now which 2 of those ideas are great ideas? Let's take those 2 ideas, assign them to somebody, and make sure they get done. Now we move on. And ideas build on ideas. So you might say, hey, we should get air conditioning for the plant. Well, we can't really afford it. What else could we do? Well, we could get one of those big fans. That would cool it down by 8 degrees. Oh, yeah, that's not a bad idea. We could do that here, and that's affordable. Like, ideas build on each other. And when you start to get ideas and employees engaged in that manner, you're sharing information with them. They're sharing ideas with you in a daily huddle or a couple times a week huddle. That's when you're starting to get engagement. And they're not just going to go down the street for $1 an hour more. They feel listened to. They're seeing
Yeah.
improvements. They're offering ideas. This is how we start to make progress.
I'm imagining like myself or I'm imagining the manager owner the very first time when they've got to go and they've got to go, hey everybody, we're everything is having a change here. We're all going to go and have a huddle right now. Now is it usually is it easier if like people know that you're in there and they already kind of a little primed, like they have a consultant in there, they're working on changes and they're working as a team with you, so that sort of gets people ready for it, I'm assuming. But I'm just picturing this, it's a very uncomfortable, and the whole point, what you do is you're getting people out of their comfort zone. But that's like a big dive into the pool where a manager. So say you're a manager and you're going to step 1. What are you saying to everybody?
Absolutely. What a great question, Noah, because I see this. I see the fear in supervisors and managers' eyes when I say things like this. They're like, I'm not going to go out there and do it. I don't know how to do those types of things. Hey, I'm going to help you, right? So we do the trainings, and I insist. I want to meet with the owners on a regular basis. I want to meet with the production team on a regular basis. I want to meet with the supervisors one-on-one, and I provide them with tools to help them. I pilot it. I show them, here's what a huddle looks like. You
Mm-hmm.
guys are thinking we're going to have this like 20-minute
So it's a
meeting.
lot easier because you're in there and people go,
Guiding it.
yeah,
Yes.
we got this expert in here. He's guiding. It's not just our owner who has been here for 50 years and now he's got a crazy idea. He's been reading some books and he's gone in and I'm not saying that, that could happen, but when people have been doing the same thing for so long, both the employers and the owners, the employees and the owners, I could just see it it being a difficult thing to get started. But having you there makes a huge difference. Do you do like role playing with the owner beforehand?
So I am typically working with frontline supervisors, right? And I meet with them one on one. And so I've also created a resource that is like, here's statements that you can use as motivation and engagement with your employees. And here are questions that you can use to motivate and drive your employees. So I am coaching the supervisors on how to do these things. I am modeling it. I'm like, here, let me show you what a stand-up huddle looks like. It's 5 to 7 minutes. Here's your 5 cues. I want you to take 5 minutes before we start and write down what is going on in the business, right? These 5 things that you're going to share with the team. And then at the end, you're going to ask questions. And there's typically more than one supervisor in the areas. And so I'll say, hey, you guys are here together. So if nobody else has an idea, it's now your responsibility, if the other guy's hosting the huddle, to come up with an idea and share it at the first couple huddles, because it will kind of help get the team going. And then once we pick our first ideas and we implement them and people see they're actually listening, they're actually doing it, right? And we pick easy ones, things that can be done. A recent one that we just did was someone's like, we're multilingual here, and yet we really have a tough time translating. Can we add Google Translate to our tablets? So boom, yep, we added the Google Translate to the tablets, and now French is speaking to those in Spanish and English. And just, it didn't cost us hardly anything. It just add the app. But had we ever thought of it? No, but they'd seen it done somewhere else, right? And that's the powers. You got all these individuals with experience from different places, and we are not utilizing all the ideas and gifts and talents that everyone has. And so by doing this, it starts to pull that together. And I go into teams and they'll be like, I don't know, I'm probably gonna have to get rid of all my people. They don't know what they're doing. I'm like, it is the process that is failing, not your people. Let's fix the process, and you'll be amazed what your people could do. Like, oh, they don't have any ideas. I'm like, oh, look at this. After a month, we got 40 ideas. 40 ideas from people you thought they had no idea. They have ideas. They want to share them. We just have not had the format to do that. And so that's why Lean brings this structure and this process that allows individuals to participate and to engage. And now we start to see that continuous improvement start to happen step by step. Can we fix everything at once? No. If anyone's thinking they're going to fix it all in a month, it's not going to happen. But we're going to come in and start chipping away and start seeing this ball roll, and you get the momentum going.
Do you see some kind of impact even in a day?
In the mindset.
Yeah. I mean, it might be like, I'm kind of drawing a metaphor of, if you're lifting weights for the first time, like the first time you're going to be really sore, but you're also going to see like huge growth, in the first week. Is it kind of like that?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar. In that first week, what you're going to hear and see is other organizations. Like, so as I'm telling the story, I'll say, like we did over at this place, here's what they were struggling with. Or they'll ask a question and I'll say, that's exactly what was happening over here. And let me tell you what we did. And it typically takes a few times. I remember one of the places I was at last summer, it was my 5th visit with the supervisor. And he told me, he's like, Matthew, I finally have time to get my paperwork done and work on the projects I'm supposed to. You've only been coming. This is only your 5th visit. So it's only been about 10 weeks and it's working. Like, it's working. I'm like, what do you think has been the biggest change? He's like, well, I use that phrase all the time. What do you think we should do? And then they just go do it. And then they don't come and ask me. And they only ask me if they really have a question, instead of just needing a pat on the back or confirmation, which is what typically happens. Supervisors or owners end up in a hero role, and everyone has got to come to them and almost bow down to them to be able to get anything done. And it is very draining for an individual. In some ways, it that ego that we talked about with the pride that swells up, but at some point it's just exhausting. It's like, what, I just don't need this anymore. Just figure it out yourselves. And that's where the frustration comes out. Employees feel not heard or hurt in different ways. And so they say, forget it. I'm not coming. I'm not going to ask anymore. And you don't want that either, because then they're disengaged and they're looking to find somewhere else to move on.
One person I interviewed a long time ago, they had what was it called? It was like open accounting, open book. What's your opinion of that, about sharing the numbers and the books with all the employees?
Well, I don't know that I go as far as sharing the entire books, but I do say that we need to be sharing the top line numbers. And so sharing, here's where revenue's at. You can even do it as a percentage. So for owners that are really nervous about sharing that, show it as a percentage. Where have we been at as a percent, or how are we doing month by month relative to the other months? Same thing with the income level. You can pick wherever you're at. Say this is above the line, right? Most of your employees won't fully understand that, but help them recognize there's all these expenses that are further below the line, but above the line, here's the things you guys can control: our labor cost, our tool spend, our material cost. That as a percentage is supposed to be only 40% of our revenue, or 28%, or whatever, and it has consistently been climbing. So this is an area we need to focus on by sharing those types of numbers. I've been at some places where they would say, well, we can't spend money on anything. I'm like, what do you mean you can't spend money on it? Oh yeah, I remember the owner told us one time that we weren't making money. So I go back and tell the owner, he's like, that was 6 months ago. We've had 3 great months. I'm like, your team doesn't know. You have not shared the information. So they're all out there hoarding away or using the screwdriver as a hammer because they're not buying a hammer because we're tight on money, and we're not tight on money, but no one's ever told them. And so again, your people will make far better decisions the more information you share with them. And I really believe that, and I've seen it to be true.
It just must be so hard for people to both that I mean, I'm sure it's hard for the people who aren't managing as well to change the thought process, because you're asking everybody to get out of their comfort zone. So many people, they just go to work and they want the day to go by quickly. They want to do an okay job or even a good job because they take a lot of pride in what they do. How do you get people to change their outlook of running towards the problem versus just holding their own? And
Sure.
you're a consultant, you're a coach, you consider yourself a coach, right?
I
That's
do.
one of
I do
your
a lot of coaching, guys, so especially for supervisors and owners.
I mean, it's just got to be a long process to make somebody get rid of their self-doubts and run towards problems. It's such a I mean, that's a superpower if you can make people do it.
So typically in an organization, you'll have about 25% of folks that will be on board and excited because finally there's change and they've been begging for it, right? And then you got about half the folks that'll kind of go along either way. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, they weren't too committed. And then you got the bottom 25 that are just resistant to change no matter what, right? As long as they are not poisoning the rest, then those can be brought along as well. But if they start poisoning, then you got to make changes with that as well. But people are like the sensors of an organization. They hear things, they see things, right? They feel things. And that information needs to be coming to those that make the decisions. And oftentimes it's not. There's not the communication levels. Most organizations I walk into, I'll ask supervisors, what's your greatest challenge this week? Communication. Communication. I'm not hearing enough about what's going on in the organization, and my people are not hearing enough from me of what is going on. And so communication is one of the biggest challenges. And it's not like I have some superpower that I can press the magic button and now people want to engage. But when they see the process and they see that there is engagement that starts to happen and the ideas start to flow, and we don't consider any idea a dumb idea, but we also don't go running after every single idea because they've seen it happen. And it's just like the program of the day, and it comes and it goes. And no, this is the hardest part, is to sustain the gains and continue to grow. And so as some consultants, they just come in and they make the change and, hey, that's great. And then 3 months later, you're right back to where you were. But instead, training and teaching and growing, yep, it is a process and it takes time to be able to get there. But you do have those early engagers and you'll get some early wins and people will look at it and be like, oh, that is pretty cool. That's pretty amazing what they were able to do. I start to wonder, right? And that's where you want to get them, is thinking. So I tell people, I'm not just paying for your hands. I want your minds too. I want your minds engaged and working. That's what I used to say when I was a manager. It's one of the phrases that I encourage supervisors to use. I'm looking for your minds. If you have ideas, please share. Non-utilized talent, underutilized talent is one of the biggest wastes.
Yeah, it's a waste for a company, but it's also a waste for somebody's existence. I have a life coach. and I go, and she's sort of a life coach slash shrink slash.
Therapist, yeah.
Yeah, I think she also does therapy. And I come in with Mike Fetch every other week, and Mike Fetch last time was fun. I feel like I'm trying a lot of things. I'm getting out of my comfort zone. I'm pushing it, but I got kind of down because I felt like I wasn't having fun, and you gotta. I mean, life is too short to go to work and not have fun, and you can go into organizations and give people purpose and give people great communication and start making the business work. Where does fun come in? I mean, my guess is you're going to say after everybody's starting to feel great and feel like they're working together, the fun is people are going to start having fun. That's probably true. But do you see fun as like a mindset that has to be something else that's put in certain kind of activities? Do you worry about fun when you go in places?
What I see is very stale organizations that have
Yeah.
not had fun activities or engagement in years. And so individuals are very beat down and and so yes, in my trainings, I'm focusing on fun. We are definitely um, speaking about ourselves in ways that makes them laugh. Bringing in, when's the last time that they had donuts for a meeting, right? Or they'll tease me like, you can't show up here unless you bring donuts, or and then some of the activities that we do simulate, right, what it would look like if we had flow, right? So we're doing ping pong balls and we're doing different things like that are simple and they can grasp it. And like, what do ping pong balls have to do with my plant,
What
right?
is flow? You just brought up flow. Wait, what do
Yep.
you mean by flow?
Well, most organizations are broken up by department, and what you need for your organization to be successful and to have additional throughput is you need flow. So we focus on where's the bottleneck at, and how can we get better flow through that bottleneck. And so I tell people when I walk into a plant, I can tell where the problems are. All I do is look for the piles. Wherever there's a pile of inventory, there's a problem because it should be
Mm.
flowing through. And as we can get that flow, so it's very much like driving a sports car, right? If you got to drive your uncle's sports car on the expressway, it seems like it'd be so fun. But you get in the left lane, you're flying, then there's a slow car. So you got to slow down and go around. Then you go fast again. Then you slow down and go around. And what kind of gas mileage do you think you get when you're driving a sports car? Not very good, right? Or you get in a family van and you're in the center lane, you just go with the flow and you're just going along, right? And that's the flow that you need. And in most organizations, they'll buy a new machine super fast. It can do so fast, but then the product just sits because the rest of the operation can't handle that speed. And so what you want is a nice steady flow. And if you can keep that steady flow without stopping, that's how you're going to get great output. So it's another one of the tenets that we talk about in lean is flow.
What if the employees you say, employees, okay, what do you think? And they go, well, I want a new index multi-spindle machine for $2 million. Or, well, no, let's make this easier. I want a Swiss machine. Doesn't even have to be the deluxe one, but I want a brand new machine that's going to be around 200 grand. You know, like lean wise, they don't necessarily need it because you're about, as you said, you don't necessarily need a new employee. You don't necessarily need, a new machine. But what if the people just really wanted it you knew that it was going to bring a feeling that the people would then go to their work and they'd use this machine and it would just have this intrinsic value, not worrying necessarily about how good the parts were or how fast it was. I mean, it would probably be really good. But say you were consulting a company and somebody asked you, what do you think of that? What would you say?
Well, first of all, I would write
Give
it
them
down.
their toy if it'll work well for you?
I will tell you that that's what many manufacturing companies do. The owner gets his latest toy and thinks it's going to be so
I'm not
fun.
talking about the owner. I'm talking
Okay.
about the people on the shop floor.
So
They want the toy.
I would write it down on the idea log, and then we can go through and say, now what's going to add the greatest value to the customer? Because is it about the customer? Is it about our employees? Right? So if we're just focusing on something that we think is going to be really cool, how does this add value to the customer? Because what we're trying to do is reduce the non-value added, the waste. And most of what we do is non-value added. And in many cases, these things cannot be justified. And are they done? They're done every day.
What do you think of the companies that throw a huge party for their employees, or take them out on a big outing and spend some money on that? It's not, I mean, it doesn't, like, on paper look like you're giving something to your employees. There is waste, maybe, but is it entirely wasteful?
I think there can be real value in it, especially if it's born from employee ideas and employee engagement versus from the top down. Like, oh, I think my team would really like to go bowling, whether they want to go
Yes.
bowling or not. But instead, if you
Ask
have
them.
committees, one of the things I encourage is create committees to work on different things. A safety committee, an activity committee, and if that activity committee every other month they're going to come up with an activity, and one of their activities is, we're going to go paintballing for those that would like to, and it's on company time. And it's time that we get to spend together and see ourselves in real life, if I can say it like that. There's absolutely value in those types of things. As an organization and as people, we need that. These are, as I tell the frontline supervisors, these are real people with real problems that are coming into your doors every day, and they show real emotion. And if you act like they're robots, you're not going to do well as a leader. And you have to engage with these types of things. The difference between poor leadership and no leadership is not very much. And so if you are not doing much as a leader, then you're in the poor category. Leadership is proactive and engaged and engaging others. And that's what you need to be doing as a leader.
What is something, when you think of happiness, what do you think of? What does it exactly mean to you?
That's a great question, Noah. I think that we love a sense of fulfillment. So everyone loves a challenge, right? When I ask my kids, if I want to go rake the yard, right? I ask my youngest, I say, I'd have you come help me rake the leaves, but I'm not sure you're old enough. He's going to come rake the leaves with me to prove that he is. Now, number one, I am doing it with him, so that's a huge part. But put a challenge out there, and they'll rise to it. Now, if I would have just said, "Hey, go out and rake the leaves," ain't going to happen, right? And that's what happens with employees. It's like, go do this. It's like I don't know if you guys can do this. Or with a team, they'll be like, these guys aren't going to come up with any ideas. I'm like, they don't think you guys can come up with 10 ideas by Friday. They're going to have 15 ideas because they're going to prove it wrong. Like, people love a challenge. People love to contribute. I believe that. Now, again, there's probably some percentage that is just not going to affect their day. It doesn't move the needle. But most people, they want to give their best. They want to show that they can do it, which is why visual systems work so well, because we love to see that we can meet and exceed expectations. And so if you're measuring it, they're going to meet it and they're going to find a way to exceed it and reward them for it. And so that's one of my other shares is share rewards. You got to find ways to reward your people. And many times, and with the new generation, it's with more time off or more opportunities for them to step into leadership roles or do these types of things. It's not just more money, although that is a factor as well.
And be heard.
Be heard. Yep.
Okay, you have 11 kids. How has your expertise in what you do influenced the way you run your household? I have no doubt that it definitely plays a part. I mean, it already has played a part because it's enabled you to be a part of your family. But obviously, 11 children, I mean, you have to be efficient. You have to be efficient with time. You have to be efficient with money. I thought it was so hilarious. You know Marie Kondo?
I don't.
Marie Kondo, she's the one that's all about throwing out everything.
Okay.
You clean your house and you throw out everything that doesn't give you joy, and everything is like the most bare minimum, minimalist thing. And then she had a couple kids, And then she just threw her hands up and was just like, and this is like the biggest zealot of this.
Yep.
She wrote a book on it. She was the one, and then was just like, yeah, whatever, I can't do this anymore. So having 11 kids, it sounds like I'm guessing that you need your Kaizen black belt to, forgive me if I'm getting that wrong, to make life possible. Yet at the same time, I'm wondering if in a madhouse of 11 children, sometimes it's just like, yeah, we're not lean here. We got plenty of fat, and this is the reality of having 11 kids.
So funny you say that, Noah. So one of the things that people would tell my wife when I would bring her to work events is like, oh, I feel so sorry for you. How do you ever put up with him at home? Right. And so she does have some boundaries where I am not allowed to, quote, apply my lean principles in some of the areas. But as a household, I would definitely say many of the things apply, right? Both the efficiency type things, but the other one that's really had a huge impact on our family has been the idea concept. Right.
Yes,
Sitting down
I'm
with our
sure.
kids and saying, okay, we can't do everything. There's a lot of us and we have a lot of different things we want to do this summer. Why don't each of you write down 3 ideas that you would love to do this summer? And we'll put them up on the board. And then collectively, we'll decide which ones are the best. And we're going to go do those. And so just little things like that, where pulling together from I'm going to call it the team, but the family of ideas and how do you think we can do that? We've got 3 events scheduled on the same day. We can't go to all of them. What do we think that we should do, to make this work? Do some of us go to each? Are we all going to go to one? Those types of collaborations have just built within my children the recognition of the give and take, and the recognition that their idea and themselves, it's not all about them, right? And we all need that. We all need to have that recognition. And some of us learn it earlier in life, and some don't learn it till later, and it's very painful when they start to realize that everything's not about me. In life. And so those are
they learn that young with you, but at the same time, you have the big challenge of making everybody feel heard, because I can't even imagine like people feeling neglected. And you must just be like, shoot, like I can only hang out with like a couple of them, with quality in one night. So how do you balance that? I know we're going off on a tangent, but I'm just fascinated by this.
No, absolutely. It's a great question. So one of the ways that I do that is I try to include them in as many things as I do. So if I'm just running out to the store, I will grab one of the kids to go with me, right? I went and visit this older lady. I have one of the kids that always goes with me. I help this guy and give him rides. One of the other kids always goes with me. Jessica always goes with me when we pick him up. And he likes to talk about political topics that I don't like to hear about. I'm like, hey, you can't say that. We've got kids in the car, right? And so I can help use that.
So they help you in that way.
They help me in that way. But finding as many ways as possible to have them engaged in my active life, instead of saying, okay, this is my work and now it's time for family. Like I meld all these things together, whether it's church or work or life, right? Melding these things together and having them engaged in all of those so that it's not separate compartments that we have to focus on. Of course, there's still times that I need to spend one-on-one with each of them. But
yeah, do you try to spend one-on-one with each of them? Is that something that's a goal?
It is for sure. But I'll tell you, I thought I would train my oldest kids and then they could train the rest. And it just has not turned out that way. Every kid is so incredibly different. But there was one point where we were sitting down with my daughter. She was in college, and it was my wife and I and her. And she goes, I don't know if we've ever gone out to eat, just the 3 of us. And I said,
that make you feel kind of sad?
Wow, I think you're right. It was never a focus for me. So now with my younger kids, I make sure that I do make times when it's just my wife and I, or just myself and them, that we go out to eat. It was just, we did other activities together, but it wasn't one of those types of things. So it's still learning. I'm still learning. It's not like I'm an expert dad because I have 11. The more kids you have doesn't necessarily make you a better parent. Once you have 3, you're a full-time parent anyway. But there's lots of learning to be done.
What about those of us who just have 1 terrible 2? I'm a part-time parent. He does go to bed at 7 o'clock. So, I guess I have it pretty easy, but
You haven't seen the full flavors yet because each child is so different, right? And so if you only have one or two, then you've seen this and that, right? But there's a whole broad spectrum that they could have fallen in. And so each kid, that's what's been so fascinating to me. They grow up in the same family, and yet each one has such diverse interests. And that's fascinating to me. It's the same thing with employees. We'll have 3 or 4 employees doing, quote, the same job, and yet their interests and their skill level and different aspects of it is totally different. And that's really fascinating to me. Can be built on
how often do you feel like you learn from your kids?
every day, all the time. Absolutely. Just straight up blank questions that they ask, and like, I don't know. I never thought about that before. Let's look into it and figure it out together. To disappointments and things that didn't go as I expected, or decisions that are made that you're like, what? Why? Why would you make that decision? Do you see the consequences that are going to come from that? So yeah, every day I'm learning from my kids. I'm in a high growth mode with my kids, and right now they're age 6 to 25. So I've got 4 that are out of the house, but I'm still a parent to them. They still call. They still have questions. Dad, my tire's flat. I'm in a grocery store in Florida. Can you help me? I'm like, well, I can provide some advice, but you're gonna have to step up on this one. So yeah.
And you don't have to answer this, but why? Why have 11 kids?
My wife and I both enjoy children,
Okay.
and so we really enjoy having kids, being with kids. She was a house parent at a children's home before we got married, and we really enjoy kids and helping them grow. It gives us a lot of purpose in life, and we thought we were done with 8, and then felt called to adopt two little girls from Haiti. And so we put
Oh,
in
you
to start
adopted.
adopting. It was a long process. We didn't know who we would get, and during that time, we had another. And then we were paired up with two girls, sisters from Haiti. They were 8 and 10 at the time, and we've had them for 4 years. And it's been quite the challenge, quite the growing for our family and for them. They knew almost no English when they came, and they now know English. They can speak it, they can write it. They're catching up in school. And emotionally, there's just a lot of trauma in their background to deal with. And we have not had trauma kids before. And so
Yeah.
learning about trauma has been a huge growth for my wife and I as well.
Wow. I feel like, you have credibility as someone who likes to be out of his comfort zone. You have to be in order to have that many kids, unless it's just sort of by accident and you're just like, yeah, whatever, right? but, but is that something that you're proud of, an aphorism? You said, what do you do in the morning? You do like an intentions or you
Devotions, yeah.
devotions?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, so with my faith as a Christian and believer in reading the Word and taking time to consider how am I going to walk today, putting
Yeah.
on the fruit of the Spirit and wanting to be led by the Spirit and not by the flesh. So it's too easy for me to just speak my mind, which is usually not helpful. Instead, I want to respond in a way that is Christ-like and encouraging to others. And so that's how I spend my morning devotion, is preparing myself for the day. And then at the end of the day, I hopefully will have less to regret, and as I close out my day in prayer as well.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a lot less formal. I have a gratitude list and I just sort of let it fly, whatever comes out. But a lot of it is sort of aphorisms of, I'm grateful that I'm, brilliant or whatever. And sometimes I say, I'm grateful that I can embrace discomfort. Obviously, it's a challenge that everybody has trouble with. But is that something that you believe in? Like when you're trying to change people's mindsets, going into companies, having people do that kind of thing, aphorisms, mantras, neuroplasticity. I'm really into that. I'm really into positive self-talk. I like listen to this guy tell me how I'm doing this and that. To me, that seems like it might help people. Is that part of your coaching?
I would say my approach is a little bit different. I talk a lot
Okay.
about people have these to-do lists to do, and they write down
Yeah.
all these things they want to get done. But I encourage them to have a to-be list. How do you want to be perceived and when you're
Yes.
with? So
Yes.
I want to be kind. I want to be patient. I want to be many of these things that are perhaps not natural for us. And so you've got to be intentional in thinking about those things if you want to be that. And so a to be list, to be present, right? That's one of the things with our family. To be present. When you're here, be here, not with your head in the phone or
That's one of the
not
things
thinking
I
about it.
try to do every day. Just being mindful and being present. That if you can instill that in your kids, that's amazing.
Yeah, the to be list, both with my kids and with my clients, is one of the things that I encourage them. They've got the to do list down, but they need the to be. And think about that and be intentional, and it'll affect the way that you interact with others. And I tell everybody that leadership is not a title. You do not need a title to be a leader. Just show and speak and mentor and be who you want others to be, and that's what a leader is.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the people of the world, Matthew, before we close this?
Yeah, I want to encourage folks to be open to the concept of lean. And if you're willing or interested in trying it yourself, I have a lean manufacturing starter handbook. You can go and read it. There's no obligation. It's free. It's on the 20helpinghands.com website and can see for yourself what would this look like. I also have on there a free ROI calculator. So you enter in kind of where you're at today in your business, and it would tell you where you could get to with lean. And here's the impact it could have on your bottom line. So whether I do it or whether you do it yourselves in lean manufacturing, there can be some tremendous outcomes possible within your organization if you're willing to consider it.
One more thing. If people want to find you, what's the best way they can get in touch with you? What's your URL, et cetera?
Yeah, I am on LinkedIn under Matthew Rassi, but also 20helpinghands.com, spelled out 20, the word helpinghands.com.